converted mon here. Okay, I'm going to be talking about the ideas of this video, but not responding to the video itself per se. Because it's 24 minutes and 58 seconds, and if I was to respond to the video, we'd be here, I don't know, 1,000 years or something. So, I'm just going to talk about the meta idea of this sort of video. And we see these from time to time. We see the apologist, and, usually it's Christianity, because it's a popular religion. So that's what we usually see it from. It's rare to see the Muslim videos. If you see the Hindu video, well, you probably can't understand it because it's not in English, unless you speak whatever that language. I don't even know the language because I'm American. Why do I need to know anything but American stuff? Whatever. I don't even know American stuff because I'm American. All right, anyways. So we've seen this, broadly speaking. We've seen this before. The atheism means X, Y, and Z. Atheism leads to nihilism. Whether it be nihilism of an existential crisis or void, or in this case, moral nihilism, where morals just don't really matter. Morals are just, who cares? Morals are just like ice cream flavors. I just prefer this over that. And it doesn't really mean anything. We've heard this many, many times, that without God over everything, without God, there's no real good or bad or right or wrong. You have to have God. I'm going to say it that way every time. Maybe not. But you have to have that in order to establish the thing in stone. It is wrong to wear a hat on Sunday. Don't put it on. Don't even pick up a hat on Sunday. Just leave hats alone. If you have a hat, don't touch it. Don't go near it on Sunday. It's just, you know what? Pretty much just don't even have hats. Just avoid the problem altogether. Don't even have a hat. If it looks like a hat, if you think it might be a hat, don't have it. Don't buy it. Don't get it. Don't be near it. Just in case, because that's a moral that God has said to do. And you say, well, God never said to do that. Well, maybe not your God, but some God might have. No, if we're talking about the Judeo-Christian God, that God just said, don't wear mixed fabrics. Don't have on mixed fabrics. Goodness gracious, you don't want to have mixed fabrics on. That's objectively wrong. It's wrong in the past. It's wrong in the present. It's wrong in the future. It's wrong even if you don't know that it's wrong. It's wrong. And Jesus saying, well, it doesn't matter. Just treat your friends, your neighbors as yourself, and whatever. No, that doesn't negate that rule either. It's still there. It's just now you're forgiven for not doing it. Now you can do it because it's okay to commit the moral atrocity of having mixed fabrics, or the actual moral obscenity of eating shellfish, which I personally do think is objectively wrong, but only because the lobster says so. And only in regards to lobsters. The other ones don't. It doesn't matter. But as long you cannot eat lobsters, that is a fact. That is, that is the objective moral view of reality. That is true. That is true. It's just true. That's just how it is. Well, who cares? If it's true, it's true. That is to say, if X is something bad, we find distasteful, we don't like it, but that's the truth of reality, then it doesn't matter, right? And so if morals ultimately are just flavors of ice cream, and if it's only that if you had a ultimate thing that says X is wrong, that this is right or wrong, then that's the ultimate reality. Whatever reality is whatever reality is, right? Well, how do we determine what's real? We can't just go, well, here's the consequence of this being real, because that would be an appeal to consequence. We have to say, if it's true, then we expect to have the same sort of evidence that we have for everything else. And if we don't have that evidence, then we should hold it in question, in judgment. We should not say it's true, not say it's false, just be skeptical of it. I don't know, either way, whatever. And I'm going to, maybe I'll figure it out. Maybe I have to act upon it, and then I do so based on the best available knowledge I personally have, So the other problem with these videos that we see is atheism cannot imply anything ever at all. Because, as we all know, and the apologist knows this, but they keep ignoring this, atheism isn't a worldview. It cannot imply anything. It makes no sense to say that it implies X, Y, or Z, because it doesn't. Neither, by the way, with theism. Theism couldn't imply moral nihilism or moral non-nihilism. It couldn't imply that, because by itself, it isn't a worldview. You need to have a specific type of theology for you to perhaps be prescribed a worldview. And there might be a theology that doesn't prescribe a worldview. Okay, so atheism is simply, as we know, a response to a question. So we got our little skeptical lobster here, and the evil turtleist says there's a God, and so the lobster says, what's that? I don't believe in that. Or maybe the lobster says, I don't know what that is, but that's not a thing. Either way, it is not on the lobster to show that the God isn't there, to prove it's not true. It doesn't mean that there's no morals or that this leads to any other conclusion. It's just the lobster don't believe in that thing that the turtle talked about. Whatever that is. Whatever you mean by God. I don't know what you mean by God. I don't believe what you're saying is a real thing. That's it. It doesn't mean anything more than that. It doesn't mean anything else. That's all it is, and all it ever can be. So, to say that atheism implies anything is incorrect in full. And no matter how well made or spoken your video is, or well thought out, it's irrelevant, because you're saying that this thing implies this other thing when it can't. It's like being a Republican implies moral nihilism. Being a Democrat implies moral nihilism. What? How? What does that mean? There's no God. Let's just say that. Let's just say there's no God. That doesn't imply anything at all. Doesn't mean anything beyond, okay, there's no God. And that's it. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying anything else. Well, that means X, Y, and Z. No. You have a belief about what God's existence entails. That because you think that there's a God, you also have other ideas about God that you think are true. Because this God exists, in your mind at least, then that also means that I have an objective moral source of values that I can point to. And so that my morals aren't just mere opinion, they're actual facts of reality. They're akin to gravity, or the Earth being an obloid spheroid, the universe being 13 billion years old, the Earth being 4.54 billion years old, biological evolution, all the other things that people sometimes like to deny because they happen to be an apologist. But nonetheless, all the things that are real, also morals are a thing like that. What ethical system is that exactly that you think that atheism would have to use? There are several ethical systems available for your consumption, if you will. There are many ethical systems. And let me pull up a few, just because, if we're going to talk about morals, we need to talk about ethics. Okay, so we have utilitarianism, normative ethics. We have deontology, applied ethics, metaethics, virtue ethics, justice theory, and then religion. Well, that's DCT. You have ignosticism, law, contract, situation ethics, medical ethics, consequentialism, and that's just a few. Here's more, it's just normative, meta, applied. Here we go. Here's a good list. Here we go. Utilitarianism, deontologically, virtue ethics, ethics of care, ignosticism, religious or divine command theory, natural law, social contract theory, Raw's theory of justice, and moral relativism. That's the one that he's talking about in his video, essentially, is moral relativism and moral nihilism. Morals, whatever. It's it doesn't really matter. And the way that I want to treat my fellow humans, or other creatures for that matter, the way that I think that things ought to be, might indeed be subjective to me. Somebody else might indeed disagree with me. So we're going to have to come to some sort of agreement on what we're going to build our principles around. What rules are we going to play by? If we look at morals as a game, then ethics are the rules of that game. And if you've ever played a trading card game, you'll know about the rule within the rule book that says that the card rule, the rules on the cards, can outdo the rules of the book. So here's the rules in general of how to play the game. But the card might say to do something that actually breaks those rules. So let's say you draw a hand of 7 cards to start with, but there's this card you can put into your deck that allows you to actually draw 8 cards to start with. That card has to start in play in order to prove that you own it and it's in your deck, but it counts against the limitation of how many cards you can have in your deck, which is a rule that no card can break. Because, well, they don't want to break that particular rule in that game. So I have that card in play. I sacrifice a slot in my deck to do it, or and then that lets me have an additional card in my opening hand. Okay, well, fine, fair enough. So the rule book is the ethics, and then the cards are the morals. They can sometimes challenge the ethics. They can sometimes seem like they're breaking the ethics, but that might be okay. That's one way that you could look at the whole thing and say there's still rules. It's just sometimes the rules are overridden by the other rule that allows the rules to be overwritten in certain circumstances. In the video, he brings up slavery, which is a favorite go-to of many apologists. Of course, the Judeo-Christian Bible doesn't say slavery is bad, ever. Doesn't ever say not to do it. No one anywhere in the Bible says it's wrong. Not even a little. Jesus doesn't say it's wrong. Nobody says it's wrong. It instead codifies how to deal with slaves. And you can't just say, well, that was for their time, because then that means it's subjective. It's tied to a time period, and it doesn't clarify that. It doesn't say this is only for now during this period of time, and then after that, this is how you should behave after this is done. It doesn't say that. So it's all interpretation after the fact. If it's not in your book, you can't then insert it into your book and say it's in there. And here's the problem with a book. It's static. It's unchanging. Unless you're allowed to change it. But for the most part, it's static. It doesn't change. And the apologists might see this as a benefit. The rule is always to do this. It never changes. It's always that. Well, that feels so good. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to worry that tomorrow it's going to be different. It applies all the time. Doesn't matter how I feel about it. That's the way it is. Not wearing mixed fabrics is the way to go. If I have on mixed fabrics, I am doing something wrong. Now, of course, with Christ, it's okay. You're forgiven. So, yeah, you're doing something wrong, but it's okay to do something wrong. Because, see, there's the card, if you will, going back to my metaphor of the card game. The card of Jesus lets me break the rules of the ethics. In fact, it lets me break all the rules of the ethics. Because I can do all these things that are sinful, that are bad, as long as I have this card in play. That this card covers me from all the problems that I otherwise would have. Sure, I'm breaking the rules. Doesn't matter, though. I mean, yes, I'll be subject to the laws of the land, which, by the way, I'm supposed to follow the laws of the land. But it's okay if I break that, too, because I'm still forgiven. So in the end, I won't be punished for breaking any of the rules, but you, who didn't have that card in play, will be punished. You didn't put that card into play. That's just how the game works. That card lets you basically break all the rules and win the game, no matter what. This is a good idea. I think I should develop a card game like this. Yes, that sounds like a good idea. All right. So, moral nihilism, I don't have that. That's not my ethical system. Now, my ethical system isn't perfect, and I don't make any claim that it is. I broadly speaking, go towards utilitarianism. Just because it's simple. It's easy to understand. It's easy to say what it is. And I'm a simple guy, okay? So the most good for the most amount and the least harm for the least amount. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one. But sometimes the needs of the one outweigh the needs of the many. But when does that happen? Well, it's kind of complicated. But broadly speaking, that's the ethical system I prefer. But whether I use it or not, who knows? Ideally, I want to, but goodness knows if I will. But that's the rules that I've picked. And you might have picked the rules of DCT, and you might think that that gives you the ultimate rule book to play by. But of course, you don't know that that is the best way to play. You're told that it's the best way to play. And I call this video Christianity Implies Thralldom. I think I said that word right. I probably didn't, but whatever. Which is just another word for servitude, slavery. Yeah, you're a slave. Why? Because you're told what to do. Do this. That's it. That's what you're supposed to do. It's okay if you don't do it because you accepted Christ, but you're supposed to do it. It's weird. It's a weird thing, isn't it? You're supposed to do it, but you're allowed to not do it. It's really weird, but that's how it is. But you are supposed to do it. It is actually the right thing to do. Whether you can break that rule or not, it's irrelevant. It is the ultimate objective moral in the universe. Do not wear mixed fabrics. That is a rule that God wants you to follow. Unless, of course, you think the 613 laws weren't actually implemented by God, but instead people who said that God did it. But then that might cause other problems, but still, at least that's more a way to avoid that problem, you know. But Jesus said the laws are still there, and that the laws matter, and then the laws don't matter, and jeez. And love your neighbor as yourself. Yeah, okay, that one's been around for a long time as an idea. That's not really an ethic. That's a guideline, maybe, but there's problems with it because how you treat yourself might not be how somebody else wants to be treated. Treat others as they'd want to be treated, perhaps might be better, but there's still problems with that. So the formulation of things depends upon the language we use, and that requires us to question the idea that we're given in the first place. X is wrong. Do not do this. Why? Because I said not to. So, well, I'm the one that made everything. Okay, you made everything. Well, I'm in charge. I don't know about that. I mean, if you say so, but that doesn't make it right. It's right because I said it's right. Why is that right, though? Is it right because it's right on its own and you don't, it's not that you needed to say that it was right, it's just right? Or is it right because you said it was right, which means tomorrow you could say that it's wrong again? Well, what about any of this has to do with whether there is or isn't your version of God? Even if you could make the case, and you attempted to, that atheism implies whatever, which it can't, that doesn't make Christianity true. Nor does it make atheism false. What we need is some evidence that your system is true. And you haven't given us that. Rather, you've spent a lot of time and energy going off of a tired old trope of that DCT is the best ethical system of all time because I said so and because it just is. No, it's not. It's a follow the leader, no matter what the leader says. It is a complete and utter submission to an authority that you cannot question. And I don't see that as being a good ethical system. You do, but that's a you problem. You don't have any empirical evidence to offer us. You have no tests for us to perform upon your ideas, and your argument, although well formatted, does not follow. Therefore, it contains at least one logical fallacy, and because of that, we must be skeptical of your conclusions.